Hello, welcome back to Cracking the Cryptic, where today you've probably noticed I am on a different computer. I'm on my laptop today, so I hope the quality is going to be good enough for you guys to see what we're going to talk about. And what we're going to talk about is quite an interesting puzzle that was requested by a guy called Jonathan, who emailed us to say that he's been doing Sudokus for about a year and is struggling with some of the more extreme varieties. And he asked us to take a look at this puzzle. Now, very unusually, Mark and I both had a bit of time last Friday, so we did it independently. So I've already solved this puzzle, so bear that in mind as we go through it. Now, Mark was solving it as usual with an eye to speed and trying to get through it as quickly as possible. I, as usual, tried to solve it logically so that I could talk you guys through it in that way. And actually, the results of this are quite interesting. But let's have a look at how we might go about solving the puzzle. So, the first thing to note, I guess, is where can we place a 1 in this middle 3x3 block? You can see that because of the 1 here and the 1 here, a 1 can only go in that position. We'll make some pencil marks as we go through, because they might be useful. We can place pencil mark 1s in this block. As usual, I'll be pencil marking in 3x3 blocks when I manage to lock a number into exactly 2 positions. Now you can see we have an 8 and an 8 here, so this square here, that's going to have to be an 8. Let's put that in. Now, what next we might say? Do some more pencil marking. 9s are locked into these 2 squares. 5s into these 2 squares. There's quite a bit of pencil marking I think we can do here. 2, 3, 6, 7, 9. We can pencil mark 2s down here, look, and then 2s up here. Just using this central run of 2, 1, 8 here, which is quite a powerful restriction. So again, now we can use the 7. We can't pencil mark 7s into the central block because there's 3 positions the 7s could go into. But we know there will be a 7 in one of these 3 squares, and therefore the 7 here must be in the middle row. So it's either going to be here or here, and we have a 7 up there. So in fact, this is forced to be a 7. Now, what else do we need? And then we have a 3 here, look. So that forces there to be a 3 in this square at the top. Let's put that in, and obviously this is now quite nice going down the right hand side of the grid, where we've got to place the numbers 2, 6 and 9. And just for illustrative purposes, I am going to fully pencil mark this in. Now, it's around this point that Mark and I diverged in our solving. Now, what I notice next is, in my opinion, one of the absolutely key things that this channel can teach you about how to solve Sudoku. It is, if you want to really, really improve your solving, you need to be able to look at this grid in this position and notice something really fundamental. And I'll tell you it's going on in the bottom 3 rows of the grid. And the thing that we must notice if we want to improve is that whereas usually what we do is we look down rows and or look down columns and compare what's in the row, and we try and use that technique over and over again iteratively in order to solve the puzzle. Sometimes it is necessary to diverge from that. So if we have a look now at row 7, you can see we've only got 2 numbers in row 7. So ordinarily this would not be one of the places you would start to look. But it's so important to notice this 1, 4, 5 in this block, because now in effect we actually have 5 numbers in row 7, because we know that there cannot be a 1, 4 or a 5 in these squares. And moreover, we've actually got a 2 and a 6 in this square. So we actually know more. We know that the 1, 4, 5 are locked into those 3 positions. And that is so powerful. It blows this puzzle open in a sense. It certainly gives you a chance to solve it efficiently. So we know that the numbers we're missing now for the remaining contents of row 7 are 2, 6, 7 and 8. So let's just pencil mark those in and take a stare at the grid. See if we can see anything. Interesting. So let's tidy up the pencil marks. We can remove the 2 here, remove the 8 here, and we can remove, because of the 5 here, we can remove this 5 from this square. Okay, so now what could we notice? Well, one of the things we could notice, I suppose, is if we now look at the left hand side of the grid, we have 2 5s here, but we also have 2 6s. So given that this square can't contain a 6 anymore, we can pencil mark 6s here, 2 8s, do the same thing with 8s, but we know there's a 5 in one of these 3 squares, so the 5 can only go in this square now. And that is a very important breakthrough that it's very, very hard to spot with classic notation. It just requires you to get better at, when you're doing your rows and columns work, trying to incorporate the contents of the 3x3 boxes as well. This sort of thing comes up over and over again in the New York Times hard puzzle, and if you're good at spotting it, you can really make quick progress. So anyway, this is quite a breakthrough. Unfortunately, it's not a breakthrough that's so sort of devastating to the puzzle's logic that you can immediately solve the puzzle from here. In fact, you need to resort to another complicated technique. And the way we need to do that is to resort to our old friend, the finned X-wing. Firstly, let's tidy up the grid a bit more. We have this 5 here and this 5 here allow us to place a 5 in this square because of the 5 up here, look. So let's do that. And now, and to be frank with you, I needed a bit of a grid stare to spot this. This was not something that tripped off the tongue. And what I needed to notice, and this took a few minutes, was that the positions of 1s are very restricted now in the puzzle. Certainly when if we look at row 1 of the grid and ask ourselves where a 1 can go, we can place a 1 in this square, not in this square because of the 1 down here, not in either of these 2 squares because we already have 1s in those columns, and a 1 here, so that the 1s are limited to 2 positions in row 1. Now the moment we get that sort of situation arising where a number is limited to 2 positions, we have to be on alert for an X-wing. And here, it's tricky to see it, but if we look at row 8, there is an opportunity, because let's see where the 1s can go here. The 1 can go here, which isn't immediately promising. Here, well, that matches with the position in row 1, so that looks better. This one here is nice because it removes the possibility of 1 from either of these 2 squares. No 1 here for obvious reasons, and this is a 1. So what we have here is what's called the finned X-wing. And the best way to learn about what a finned X-wing does is to remove the fin. This is the fin here, and ask ourselves what this pattern of 1s means. So we know that the 1s, once I've removed the fin, the 1 is either here or here in row 8, and either here or here in row 1. So it should be clear to you that if the 1 does turn out to be in this position in the final grid, then there would have to be a 1 here as well. Similarly, if this turned out to be the real 1 in the final grid, this would have to be a 1 as well. And what that means is that we can look down the columns, we can look down column 2 and column 7 and know that there cannot be any more 1s in the grid. Now why does that matter? Well, it matters immediately for this square. This square can only be a 1 or a 4, so if I can remove the 1, that's very, very nice. So let's just restore the fin and see how that affects that logic. So now what we can do is ask ourselves a simple question: is the fin true or not? Now if the fin is true, i.e. if this is a 1, this square is a 1 in the final solution, I can remove this 1. If the fin is not true, I have an X-wing and I can remove this 1. So either way I get to remove the 1, and that's the power of the finned X-wing. It just requires you to ask the right questions in order to see the logic. And then we would get, so we can remove the 1 from there. That forces this square to be a 4, That gives us a 1 over here, and we can proceed with this with the puzzle. And from here, it's not monstrously difficult to finish. It's certainly, I'm going to leave it as an exercise for you guys to do. Certainly the hard work's been done at this point, and it should be relatively straightforward to finish. I mean, the obvious way to continue from here would be to look at the interaction of this 4 here and this 4 here. Lots of 4 up there, and now we have to put a 4 here. The moment I put the 4 here, I get a 2, etc. That completes the central row, and we're done. Now, what did Mark do? Okay, so on the screen there is where Mark got to. So a similar place to where I had to use this 1, 4, 5 combination with the 3, 9 in row 7. And Mark had noticed that the 1s and the 5s were locked into these positions in this 3 by 3 block. And he noticed that the 4 was sort of interacting loosely with these. And believe it or not, what he decided to do was to guess that there was a 4 in this position. He could see that the 4 in column 1 was locked into one of 2 positions, so either the position I've highlighted there or this position. So in order to sort of disambiguate that, he decided to guess that there would be a 4 here. And the reason he chose this square is he could see that there was going to be an immediate impact on the southeast 3 by 3 nonette. So immediately he puts this 4 in, he can place a 4 here, that forces a 5 here and forces a 1 here. So he got a lot of value from this guess immediately. And then it's not too difficult to see from here that we now have a 1 in these 2 positions. There has to be a 1 in this square. Therefore, again, he gets another number up here. He gets a 1 here. And here he stops, because he notices that he can't put a 1 anymore in the first row of the grid. This 1 here is obviously problematic in terms of this square and this square. These 2 1s rule out 1s from this square, and this 1 rules out a 1 from this square. So there is no possibility of a 1 going into row 1 of the grid from this point forward. So once he knows that, my computer will let me. I need to make sure I press the right buttons here. He's able to place a 4 into this square, and that forces a 4 into this square. And you can see that actually he's able to make quite a lot of progress immediately without needing to know anything about this nice technique using the 1, 4, 5 down here, or indeed a finned X-wing. And so a lot more efficient in terms of cracking the puzzle at speed than my method, even though I would contest that my method will work more often. It is slower, definitely having to spot finned X-wings is slower, but I think it's far more valid. Anyway, do leave comments if you enjoy the video. We appreciate that. If any of you could consider sponsoring us on Patreon, again, that would be fantastic. Thanks to those of you who've already done so. We really appreciate it. And we'll be back soon with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic, assuming my computer works.